Let's start off on defense because an interesting tidbit came out on Twitter last night via BYU defensive tackle Lorenzo Fauatea. Obviously, a fan favorite guy who's got just an effervescent personality. Zoe took to Twitter last night saying, a year ago today, I had back surgery and went into the season prematurely before letting my back heal. I played a couple of games off adrenaline and painkillers before my back couldn't hold it no more. Finally, I can say I had a healthy offseason this year. Let's go, 55, hashtag fall camp 2K22. He adds this also, coming off an injury in the previous year, 2020, it was hard for me to face the fact that I had another injury during the offseason of 2021. I tried to fight it the whole summer training, but eventually the pain was so bad, sitting down to eat a meal was painful. I had several epidural injections to help with the pain, but even that was not working. I chose a surgery option where I was able to begin rehab and training at 2 months. I did the surgery and walked out the same day. Physically, I was exhausted, but mentally, I was at my lowest. Shout out to my amazing wife, Chestina, and family for pushing me not to give up and motivating me to get back out on the field. Shout out to everyone else who pushed me, as well as my boys from home. Love y'all always. Special shout out to Dr. Skylar Main for getting me right this year. Proud of you, Zoe. We up. Now, I said also one last shout out to the best chiropractor to help me get back to normal. That was Vista Spine Care. So giving all kinds of shout outs. But the biggest thing for Zoe is he's a guy that came to BYU from Hunter High School and had a lot of people hoping that he was going to be the next great BYU defensive lineman. He has had his moments in BYU's run over the last 4 or 5 years. I can think of that USC game that BYU upset the Trojans in Provo in 2019, I believe. He had some big sacks in that game. He has had his moments where he's been his absolute dominant force that BYU hoped he was going to be coming out of the high school ranks. But the last 2 seasons very much have been marred by injury for Zoe, and the hope is that he can have a healthy senior season this year. So I've got my little depth chart here, and let's talk about the defensive tackle positions because Zoe currently is listed at the tackle position as the backup behind Gabe Summers. Now, Gabe Summers is a former walk-on who has been absolutely phenomenal when given reps for BYU the past 2 years. Summers listed at 6'2", 295 pounds as a redshirt junior. Zoe at 6'4", 300 pounds as a redshirt senior as his backup. Those two as a tandem are actually very good together, I think, and they will be very complementary to one another at that tackle position, which is a position usually you're playing and I know when I use the term 3 or 4 or even a 5 technique, you're probably wondering, what in the world does that mean, Jake? For example, a 3 technique means if you are a defensive lineman facing an offensive line, you are going to be off the inside shoulder of the offensive guard, essentially shaded in towards that center, if that makes sense. The 3 technique is there. The 4 I apologize. 3 technique is head up on the center. I apologize for that. The 3 technique is head up on the center. 4 technique is on the outside shoulder of the guard, so headed towards the tackle. Man, I can't even get it straight in my own mind. And then the 5 technique is out heads up on the offensive tackle. Now, that is what the defensive tackle position at BYU has played mainly during Kalani Sitake's tenure. Can they move inside and play with what they call the 2 technique or the 1 technique where you're inside that guard, almost heads up on the center? Well, that's where the nose tackle checks in. Nose tackles for BYU, currently the top 2 guys listed, actually 3. Caden Haws is listed as the starter for BYU at 6'2", 320 pounds. Caden is just an absolute bowling ball of a human being. He packs on a ton of weight and a ton of muscle onto a pretty a pretty small frame relative to other defensive linemen. But guys behind him, Josh Larsen at 6'4", 300 pounds, and then Atunaisa Mahe at 6'1", 310 pounds, give BYU a ton of beef at that nose tackle position. The nose either plays heads up on the center traditionally or just off of their shoulder between the guard and the center there. And I think BYU's biggest thing for their defensive tackle position this year is there is a lot more beef in the middle of this defensive line. If anything else that you want to see from BYU this year, they will not be as small as they were a year ago along that defensive line. I remember looking at the depth chart last year, and I was seeing 295 and maybe the biggest. I think they had Caden Haws like 300 pounds last year. There was not a lot of big bodies on BYU's defensive line. The depth chart itself right now reveals that these guys have packed on some serious weight because I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 guys listed at 300 pounds or more. The other guys on this roster with the backups include Alema Pilimai at 270 pounds, and he's continuing to gain weight. I believe he actually told somebody he's up to 280 pounds. Hunter Greer is a guy that BYU hopes to pack some weight on, a walk-on from Timpanogos High School up in Orem. He's listed at 262 pounds as the 4th string at defensive tackle. Then you also have Joshua Singh, who is a 6 foot, 275-pound bowling ball in his own right. He's not 6 foot, folks. He's maybe 5'10". He played at Orem High School, and I had a chance to watch Josh play. He is lightning quick. He has incredible hands. He lists him at 275 pounds as a redshirt freshman. So across the 8 guys listed on BYU's depth chart at defensive tackle alone, I am seeing a lot of guys with just bigger numbers next to their name in terms of their overall weight. And that will lend itself to helping BYU out, at least in the regard of being able to hold up a little bit better against bigger offensive lines. That was something BYU's defensive line, they had a struggle holding up against elite offensive line play a year ago. Now, some other guys who might factor in coming training camp are some names that you're probably wondering about. Bruce Mitchell is a former 2A star at South Summit High School up in Camas, Utah. They list him at 6'4", 295 pounds, helped win back-to-back state titles for South Summit during his prep days. He is back off of a mission. He delayed his enrollment until spring and has been working out with BYU since spring ball. Can he make a move up the depth chart? There's the hope that he can do that. There is another guy on this roster, if I have it up in front of me here. Okay, Isaiah Perez, another freshman coming back off of mission. He is the nephew of former BYU tight end Carlos Nuno. He is a little bit skinnier right now coming home off his mission, 6'3", 265 pounds. But I am of the expectation that Isaiah Perez, given another season here, probably redshirting this coming season, he's probably going to top out around 300 pounds. I think he could be a very good defensive tackle prospect for BYU. And that's not to say anything of a guy like Isaiah Moa potentially down the road. Moa is probably going to play defensive end this year for BYU, listed at 245 pounds. We've talked about him in our defensive end preview. But if his frame allows it and he continues to gain weight, I could see him ending up on the interior as a defensive tackle for BYU. So the good news is, if you're just looking at the BYU defensive tackle position, is there are a number of bodies to throw out there on the field at opposing teams. The bigger question will be, will they have improved play? Can guys like Caden Haws, Mahe, Lorenzo Fauatea, Gabe Summers, those 4 in particular that have a lot of game experience, I believe all 4 of those guys have at least 2 years of game experience under their belts now at BYU, and some of that has been cut short due to injury for guys like Zoe, Mahe. Caden Haws has had his own injury concerns. The hope is that those guys, should they stay healthy and with the extra seasoning that they have had so far in a BYU uniform, that they will be an improved unit simply due to the fact that they have more experience. Will that answer all of the questions BYU had with regards to their inability to stop opposing rush attacks? No, that will not answer the questions alone. But the hope is, as BYU continues to just improve and show better, with the guys having more game experience under their belt, and then with this added weight and strength in theory that they added into the offseason, the hope is that they will get out there and show a little bit better. Now, there is a huge question mark revolving around Brooks Miley. I don't have 100% certainty on this. I don't know if he was left off the roster for a reason for BYU, because he is a prep star from Pineview High School in St. George, Utah, a true 300-pounder coming off of his mission, just a huge body. We saw him doing some BYU sports camps over the summer, so he is involved with the program. At least he was this summer. I don't know why he is not listed on the roster currently, because he was a guy alongside Josh Larsen and Bruce Mitchell that I felt like that trio of players coming into BYU this year would make a move up the depth chart, because they were all 3 guys that I really thought had an opportunity to show something. Now, if it's just Bruce Mitchell and Josh Larsen of that duo, Josh Larsen is the dark horse here to become a true star for BYU in the middle of that defense. Everything I've heard about Larson is he is just strong as an ox. He's listed at 6'4", 300 pounds now. He came to BYU weighing about 250 pounds, was still just an absolute freak in the weight room. But now he's packed on, 50 pounds or so? If he is as good as the weight room numbers and what I've heard about him as it suggests he might be, he might end up being the next star defensive tackle to come out of BYU. I'm serious about this, folks. So keep an eye on Josh Larsen. They have him listed wearing the number 57 on this year's roster. A lot of intrigue with this young man, and we'll see what happens. But I'm still not 100% convinced that all of the woes that BYU had along their defensive front a year ago are going to be answered right away this training camp. We're under a week away from BYU training camp kicking off. But I'm not convinced all of the answers will come this season for the defensive line. But the biggest thing is You cannot be the Swiss cheese that was BYU's defensive line down the stretch last year. You have to be more resistant to a potent rushing attack against you. You have to make more tackles, be able to get into the backfield, disrupt plays, get your hands up, deflect footballs. You need to be a better unit overall. And the hope is with the 2 years plus that the lead guys at this position have under their belts now, that they will finally start to step in and really say, okay, we can assert ourselves at this point. You would have hoped they would have been able to assert themselves earlier, but no time like the present for that to happen for BYU's defensive tackles.